space. I love to learn, and I'm glad to be sharing a few things with Bob today on these anti-patterns.
And also, I just started the recording. I kind of missed the cue there, so I have to show this front page. So you're going to basically be working with Nitin and I, but the way we design this is we want people to interact. So Nitin and I do not have all the answers, and that to me is the most fun part of being an Agilist, because there's always something that you never thought of, and that truly is what makes it exciting. So let's just talk about anti-patterns. If you saw the meeting invite, and this is pretty straight from Wiki, an anti-pattern is a common response to a recurrent problem that is usually ineffective and risks being highly counterproductive. So that's what we're going to be talking tonight. So we have this deck of cards. And what I used to do when we were face-to-face, I would take these cards and spread them around the room. And, you know, with the face up, and like on the card, it has what the actual anti-pattern is. And I'd have people in the room on the team say, you know, can you pick one anti-pattern that we might have experienced during the sprint? And so basically I would use that as what I would call a check-in, where people would go around and show the card that they chose and then talk about it. And then as a team, we would talk about like what the pattern was and how we could avoid it. And so what I'm going to share with you is a virtualized version. So here's the deck. I'm not going to be pulling this out anymore. I'm now going to go to Miro. Can you guys see Miro right now? I hope. Yes, no? Okay. All right. And unfortunately, you know, I don't have like this monstrous screen. What this is the deck of cards that I have here. And this is an example of one of the patterns. It says we're in a hurry, so we'll do QA later after the sprint. All right. And then what I have below here is the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the team. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about each anti-pattern, why we think it's an anti-pattern, and then we're going to talk about who would be the best person on the team to help alleviate that pattern. So what we're hoping to do is raise awareness with everybody on the call about, like, you know, different anti-patterns that I'm sure you've come across, and then how you would actually deal with it. And so so pretty much, if you pay attention and participate, you'll probably be able to deal with some of these starting tomorrow when you're in the office. Not really in the office, in the virtual office, as we would say. So let's start with the first card. And what I have here is all the cards small, because you can't really put everything on a card. So I'm going to have people call on a door number, and a couple of doors have two-car garages. So we're going to have a couple anti-patterns in these things. So you guys will get to pick. And when I looked at this deck, I noticed the colors. I always thought the colors meant something, but I still haven't figured out if they do. I think it's just a way to make them interesting and pretty, but maybe you might see a pattern there or something. So the first anti-pattern that we're going to talk about is we're in a hurry, so we'll do QA after this sprint. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Is that a problem?
It's a huge problem. And the reason being that your review, when you go to the review, you'll be finding more issues, and then you'll probably be spending more time fixing them rather than working on new stories in the next sprint.
Thanks for sharing that, Sunil. That's really spot on. Does anybody else have any comments about that one?
The thing, yeah, Sandhya here. So just to add what Sunil Dubey said is we'll never do a good job of QA after the sprint. We'll be always in a hurry to jump to the next sprint. So ultimately what happens is there are a lot of bugs and issues that will go into the production, and ultimately you're making the customers unhappy. And the first and the foremost, what we always think about is to make customers happy. So finally, you never get a product that is, you know, a good product, and that kind of even, you know, seeps into our, you know, client who will not come back to us the second time. So it has got a replicating effect, you know, down the line.
You guys, this is all great feedback. And the thing that I think about too is, think about, you know, when you build code, you deploy it. Some people create branches. All right. So now let's say your team built a branch and they didn't really fully test it. So now you have this branch sitting there. They start another sprint, and that's in a different branch because the other one is in testing, right? So now what happens when they're developing new code in the new branch, right? That they're, for the new sprint, and they find bugs in the old branch, the one that they just got done with. So now you have to fix that bug in two places. And it can totally make a mess of things if you're not careful, because you could actually so easily make mistakes and have the two not being consistent. So it's, and plus in Scrum, you don't accept anything. The product owner should not accept anything that's not done. And done means that it's fully tested and ready to be deployed to production. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So who do you think could fix this? And Nitin, do you want to add anything?
Can I comment on this?
Sure.
This is long. Yeah. So definition of done is something that teams actually define themselves. So if they might choose not to include QA part of the sprint and agree that that would be definition of done. So it doesn't mean that done it has to be deployed to production. Done could be development completed. Done could be development plus QA, not deployed. So it depends what teams decide to use it as definition of done. From my experience. So what do you think about this?
Usually the definition is done is it's created with the team and the Scrum Master and the product owner, because the product owner is the one that is enforcing the definition of done.
Yeah. So if they decide that the definition of done is dev complete, so QA was not part of it, and sprint is over, so QA will be done sometime, as a part of release schedule, not part of the sprint.
Yeah.
So,
but can that
so could I just
definition
chime
change?
in? So Slava, I have seen such definitions as well. And I think this is a team that's still evolving and there's going to be a gap. Could you have such a definition of done? Of course. But will there still be pain down the road? Yes, there will. So it's really up to the team and the organization where they are and how much they want to take on at this stage versus the other. I mean, the essence of this is really just being as collaborative as possible and getting people in closer in the beginning and looking at it with the collective wisdom to take it downstream.
So, yeah, I don't want to take too much time on this. Just wanted to mention that definition of done is something the team decides what it is. But
yeah, but I have a question. Is it okay to change the definition of done from sprint to sprint? That in one sprint you are lagging behind. You say, okay, we'll do the QA in the next sprint. So we are changing the definition of done only for the sprint, and then
yeah, some stories are part of bigger functionalities. So some stories cannot be deployed to production without other stories completed, and other stories we were not able to do in the sprint. They were not part of the sprint. So a feature will take 7 sprints to be developed before it can be actually deployed. So it will take maybe several months. So how we can deploy it after first sprint, but something that is not complete as a feature.
Yeah, so let's get into some formal terminology in what the Scrum Guide says. We're talking about a potentially releasable increment. That means you don't have to deploy it production at any time, but ideally you strive towards something like that. And I guess what we're getting into is the duality or a domino effect when it comes to some agile practices in Scrum. And maybe, Bob, that's what the dual cards are over there. You start off talking about one topic, but it leads to something else in Scrum. How interesting. And they're all somehow interconnected. And I wonder if some of these cards downstream would be something like that.
Yeah, that'd be.
But in the interest of time, let's just see. Hey, who is it that might help just remedy this or influence this or see if we can move this in another direction? That's still an open question to the audience.
And there's just, you have choices. It would be the product owner by themselves, the Scrum Master by themselves, the dev team by themselves, or maybe the dev team and the Scrum Master, or maybe the dev team and the product owner, or maybe all three. So those are your choices.
So, hi, this is Mike. Just have a question, and I'm not sure if we're operating sort of outside of there, but how do different environments kind of impact that, right? So we have like a development environment that's typically the team is working through there and they do some unit testing, and then it gets released to our QA environment where the product owner is kind of getting the first go at it along with, other members on the team. And we are working with the dev team at that point.
We did a very similar thing at where I work, and we remedied that by moving from a 2-week sprint to a 3-week sprint, where at the end of 2 weeks, the team moves the items into that, QA or, end user testing phase, while the team also then focused on automation. So basically the team was not developing anything new during that period of time. And, in order so that at the end of the 3 weeks, it was fully tested and ready to go. That, there's different ways you can manage that. And that's what we did. And it seemed to work.
Right.
Because you always have that end user testing involved.
And I think maybe it was Nitin before was talking about, or somebody mentioned it, you're making changes and you're having to go back and kind of do that. So we have these sort of intermediate releases that are for smaller changes. And then we have quarterly releases where we're doing refreshes. And then there's, at that point, anything that gets found, there's like a point in the system's blocked down. Anything we go back, we have to actually back run that into kind of make updates back into the dev and the QA environment automatically gets updated, but then they got to go back to the dev environment and kind of put in any of those fixes that they did in QA while they were running that. So there's this added kind of work to make sure that your dev environment's back to level, and that does not always work perfect.
Right.
Yeah. The expression is, build on cadence, release on demand. When you're ready to release, just be ready to put it in the hands of the customer. That includes any kind of testing, documentation, features that are rich. Some of them could be small updates. I mean, my own smartphone, I keep getting dings in the morning. Oh, we have an update for your app. I'm like, I wonder what they did, because I just updated this app. I'm like, oh, a bug defect or UI interface or an enhancement. It's like, okay, no big deal. And then one day I open, I'm like, whoa, this looks completely different. What happened here? And that was a big release. So, whenever you're ready, just release something small or something big. So Bob, did you get your question answered?
Not yet. This is
Not yet?
interesting. We've been talking about this for 12 minutes. It's pretty, if you think about it, actually using this with your team in a retrospective, it's really cool because it gets people thinking outside normal, the normal, day-to-day type of work. So anybody want to take a pass at who could actually help with this?
I have a question or comment.
Sure.
When you look at the blocker, doesn't it depend on who brought up the blocker, right? Like, so my inkling would be, oh, the product owner should be the one that should fix this, should just not accept things. But what if the product owner wants to make a schedule and they're like, hey, I don't care, just give it to me.
Right. Well, the product owner has the sole authority to basically say if something is done. So,
Right.
it's they get paid the most probably out of anybody on a Scrum team, and they take the risks.
Right.
And they're being, they have business demands. So sometimes they have to, sometimes a risk, the risk might be small compared to the bigger gain that the organization can get.
Sometimes you feel like driving them around in a car and then throwing them out the window. That they've either charmed themselves into that position or earned the trust of the company, or they've just been baptized into wearing that hat, unfortunately or fortunately.
I think the Scrum Master should be enforcing these practices. He's the lead as far as the Agile practices are concerned. So if he says that we decided on this definition of done, we are not done as in terms of these stories. Their velocity goes down. It actually reflects badly on the team as a whole in front of the management when they have to show how much they are accomplishing. That is probably going to force the whole team to take another look at it and decide to do the things the right way.
Right. And that's where
Sunil likes to shame people and use peer pressure as Scrum Mastery tactics.
And that's where the retrospective would be a good thing. You could actually, that's why you always do your retrospective after your sprint review. because you want to get that feedback into the retrospective. Some people try to schedule the retrospective before, but to really do it right, you do it after, because you want that feedback that you're getting to go into your retro. And what you mentioned, the team would, be able to really discuss it and talk about it as far as, what caused that problem, what could we change? And so what I heard is we have a 1 vote for the Scrum Master. Is there any other votes?
Product owner.
Okay, 1 vote for the product owner. I only have 1 card, so I'm just gonna move it around till we all settle.
Sorry, what was the question? What are we
We're
defining?
okay. What we're trying to do with this exercise is, number 1, it's great for your retrospectives because your product owner attends your retrospective, and it's just a good thing to do. Like I mentioned, like I take this deck and I would spread it around the tables and let people pick a card that they thought they might have encountered during the sprint. So you generate the conversation. And then what this next piece is, now you're in the position where this is happening to you. Who would, we're trying to give you the knowledge so that you can deal with this problem in the future. Like, so who do you think it would be? Would it be the team? Would it be the Scrum Master? Would it be the product owner? Or would it be a combination of? Would anybody think maybe it might be in the middle? Because basically, the team should be following definition of done. The product owner should be making sure that the definition of done includes that it's fully tested, and the Scrum Master enforces the process. That's my opinion. There's no answer key with these cards. So, what does everybody think of that?
I think everybody will provide their own perspective. So some of the cards might reflect something particular to development team, something would reflect particular to requirements. So something will come from Scrum Master if it wasn't, Scrum process was not followed. So I think it belongs in the middle, like you just said.
Are we okay with that?
No, I'm not.
Okay, go ahead.
And the reason I'm not is at the end of the day, the product owner is the one that is going to either say yay or nay whether this is going to go beyond it. So you can have your branch, you can have your stuff, you can have passed all the dones that were agreed to by the team, but at the end of the day, if the product owner does not accept it, does not approve it, it's going nowhere. So at the end of the day, who failed? I mean, it goes nowhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, looks like you're assuming that each sprint will result in a release.
But that's
every 6 sprints or every eight sprints. That's quite possible.
But here would be my danger. Here would be my pushback is if in the event that you don't have a quality release or an ability to do that, what happens to the next one? Do you basically going to not take on more till that one's done? So basically the sprint extends to the next sprint, so you're going to finish it?
I would say that depends on what the team decides in the next sprint planning meeting. But stick to the definition of done until the whole team comes together and says that after the retrospective or during the retrospective that we need to redefine the definition of, relook at the definition of done and change that. If that doesn't happen, until then, stick to the definition of done. If it is not done completely, it's not done during that sprint. Just go with that and pick it up in the next planning meeting that these are the stories which are still not done and this is what is remaining and we need to take a look at that.
If it was not, if definition of done was not met, then it will go back to backlog and reprioritized for the next sprint. It may not even make it next sprint.
Yep,
It might
sure.
go, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, what you said, Slava, is very important because a lot of, like when I'm working with new teams, they think things automatically roll over. And it's a lot of times your product owner will, but sometimes the product owner might have looked at it and said, well, that's not really what I want. So they might decide to put it in the backlog. So it's interesting. And so what I'm hearing is, you some people think it belongs with the product owner. So Nitin, you want to be the tiebreaker here?
Oh, I was a former product owner, and I got a feeling there might be some people who want to throw Tom out the window. The kind of
hey, Nitin, I'm sending you the check.
They
I'm
might run
sending you
me
the check.
over. I don't know. I would put it in the middle for now and just let people mull over that. And I'm going to also call Elmo. If people don't know what Elmo is, ELMO. It's like, enough, let's move on.
Okay.
The thing with Scrum is you cannot really talk about one topic without getting into other stuff. Whoever created the Scrummy stuff or doing some sort of mind tricks and psychological things, and like, oh yeah, we're gonna mess with people's neurological brain cells so they start talking about at least 2 or more topics. So I'm curious.
It
Let's.
was good. So maybe going forward, we can maybe do better time boxing, so we don't
There
talk
we
as
go.
long on one topic.
Yes.
And
so let's. Yeah,
we're not going to get through. You know, I don't want to disappoint people, but we're not going to get through this whole deck tonight. So like we'd have to do each card in like 3 minutes, and it, you know, I think we wouldn't get anyone near as much, but we can, you know, we'll try. So if somebody could yell out a door number, it's 1 through 19.
Give it to Tom before he gets out the window. Tom, yell out a number before
15.
All right, 15
Okay.
it is. Okay, I have no idea what these cards are, so.
And we can even put things in chat if you feel we're going slow. Just say, hey, go faster, Elmo. And let's see what 15 says. Can't really read, it's a little fuzzy, but you're going to read it out to us, Bob. Oh, my boss on team.
My boss is on my team. That's interesting.
So
What is
power
that?
dynamics.
That's an impediment.
Any
So let me
thoughts
just
about that one?
add content. I'm assuming this is like my boss is on my team, but my boss is not part of the Scrum team.
I think the boss is part of the Scrum team at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But he's going to influence.
I mean,
he's going to influence you as his manager.
At that point, you got to have a very, very clearly defined role. And I do this with my VP sitting in on projects, and I have to basically sync with him and basically, you know, draw a line. And at first, it felt like I was like putting my job at risk, quite frankly. And then he started to get it. It's a really dangerous and risky proposition to integrate a functional manager like that into projects. But you have to kind of take them aside and basically say, hey, this is your role. This is your lane. This is where you have to stay when you're on this team. And it really doesn't work unless there's still an external product owner and even stakeholders that are the real influencers of the project. But I've managed to make it work at times. It's still a lot of risk though.
If the company is not following Agile, or they think they're following Agile, but they're not, if there's a lot of functional managers that you have to report to, and they can just swing a wrench at your sprint backlog and reorganize everything for you all of a sudden, that's really there's no fundamental understanding of the process in the company, and that comes from functional managers. I'm speaking from my experience.
Yeah, in my experience, we had the team was called the Dungeon Masters. We were in the basement, and all the executives that everybody's boss was, they were up, in the higher floor. So they'd come down for our daily scrum, and they'd sit around the outside, just waiting to kind of attack. And when I was actually serving as a scrum master, so my job was when they started interfering, I'm like, no, you have to wait till after the daily scrum. And it was a constant thing until they finally got it. But it's a problem. They were not on the team, but I could see where a person would be worried, like, my manager's on the team, I got to do great. So who do you think could fix something like that, or help fix it?
It would be the scrum master.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
Training, coaching.
Like it should be a scrum master. Yeah,
it's totally up to the scrum master to set that boundary. And that's the only way I was able to make it work, is say, hey, you asked me to be the scrum master, this is my job, this is how I need to police you. And don't take it personally, but if you're really serious about doing it this way, if this is the way we're going to organize ourselves, if this is the way we're going to work, I'm going to have to every time you reach into the cookie jar, I'm going to have to slap your hand away, because it's you have a role to play. And then of course you're a functional manager. Work through the product owner, work like you're on the team, pick a role and go for it. But don't try to blow it all up every time you come in the room.
So my personality, I agree with this, but there's also sometimes where the functional managers are a really technical person and they've come up through the technical ranks. So that was part of the team, in which case you have to put them on like a product owner type role and sort of scope them out and have the strong Scrum Master.
That is the scenario here. I mean, my VP's grown up with the company and has insights into the product, a technical viability that no one else has. And so you're absolutely correct, but you're spot on with that. And honestly, in this case, we have him in more of a dev role, and then working with Lauren, who is actually his direct report for the product ownership. So he gets it. It's a very rare person that can split up the roles though and understand where they should, what mode they should be in at any given time. I don't recommend it. It's really difficult and super risky, but it seemed to have worked in a couple scenarios.
We have Scrum Masters that are bruised and bloodied and have lost part of their soul in all of the power dynamics.
Yeah, it's really kind of,
you know, that's, yeah. You hit it on the head. I mean, if I wasn't such good friends with him and we didn't have that relationship that is the true bond that allows us to talk about things like this, I would never recommend it. Right. You know, I should really preface all of this is because me and my VP are actually, we have a very good understanding of each other and are quite friendly. You know, I would consider him a friend, right? Not just a boss. So that in itself is kind of a flag for many people, but it's the only way it can work otherwise.
Yeah, and there's something what's not on this picture and the slides. It's a slightly different scenario, but what if you had an agile coach? You know, someone who's kind of watching it and he's not necessarily as embedded or as influenced or charmed by these power dynamics. You know, you might seek the help. You know, the Scrum Master, hey, you know, I'm noticing something, Mr. Outsider or Mr. Agile Coach, and this is what it is. But I do agree. You know, let the Scrum Master carry that burden and try to navigate it, and it's going to be heavy.
So, I mean, we're talking about like power dynamics and egos and things like that, and I thought part of Scrum was to not have that, right? There's not titles and things like that, and so I mean, I think actually the Agile coach, right, could be helpful. The Scrum Master actually runs that, so I do see the Scrum Master putting in those, you know, enforcing sort of the ways of working, if you will, right, and making sure that we're not doing that. Like every voice in the room should be heard. It shouldn't be, well, you know, the hierarchy should be going away as part of an Agile team, and there shouldn't be
100%.
Yeah, I see that Valerie has her hands up. Valerie, you have a question? You want to say something,
John
Valerie?
is very good at picking up and hearing everybody's voice. And John said, "Oh, someone's hand is up."
Yeah.
So does Valerie want to chime in?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. If you want to turn on your camera, that'd be good too.
Okay. Hold on. My bandwidth was a little wonky earlier.
There you go.
All right. Can you see me? See me now?
Yep. Go ahead with your question or comment.
I was going to say, I put it in chat as well, that you really need to have a strong Scrum Master who's going to help keep everybody on track. You can't have a wilting flower who's going to be intimidated by that VP title, whatever it may be. And I actually had a Agile coach in one of my meetings, and he tried to derail things. And I was like, wait. That's not the path we're supposed to go down. And that's not what you taught me. And he's like, oh, you know what? You're right. And then we got back on track. So you just have to be one of those people that's going to, you know, put on a line and stop people. And if you work with a team and develop that dynamic where everybody's listening to everyone, they'll respect that, and they'll be happy that you've gotten them back on track versus letting them go off on a tangent or something.
And that's so important, because a lot of times in organization, like, there's this mindset where, okay, a developer can rotate it as a Scrum Master. And whenever that comes up, you know, I'm like, you know, do you really want to be successful? Because a developer, they want to develop, they don't want to be the Scrum Master. And what, you know, the whole idea was like rotate them through, so that way you don't have to have the headcount of a Scrum Master, but you're losing that whole idea of a self-organizing team and a high-performing team, because you're not going to ever reach that by not having a Scrum Master. But
Developers having hard time updating status of Jira tickets, so they don't wanna do the housekeeping work. They just want to develop. So this should be somebody who governs the whole process. Make sure sprint stories are getting done by end of sprint. Status is updated, and let developers just code. That's what they like to do. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I still feel that Nitin had a point when he talked about bringing in a coach in such situations, because we are talking about managing the meetings or maybe what is happening in the room. But what happens outside that room and how much of that is going to impact what interactions take place inside the room, you never know. And for that, both the teams, both the boss and the subordinate, both of them need coaching. They need to be reminded on a regular basis what their roles are, and then while they are in the scrum, not the meeting, in the scrum, they are playing that role, and everything else is going to be outside that room only. And what is happening outside room should not be impacting what they are doing in their team. And that I doubt that the Scrum Master alone can do that very effectively in that setting. It has to be somebody from outside the team.
That's where the project manager comes in.
Yeah, if project manager knows Agile, yes.
There's no project manager.
Project manager in Agile.
Yeah, that's where the project manager comes in.
There is no project manager in Agile.
So let me just try together. We've heard some good commentary and good voices. So what we're saying is, ideally, or in a utopian state, the Scrum Master should help influence this or guide the people along. If the Scrum Master needs help, go outside the team, and someone outside of the team may be someone like an Agile coach. So Bob, let's leave this here and let me call in Elmo, because again, we're getting into the duality effect or the dominoes, which I bet some other cards might touch upon these. All good conversations.
That's right.
How should we do this? Should we ask Tom, who do you want to nominate to call out the next number?
Let's go for Valerie. Go for it, Valerie.
Well, Valerie, you get to choose between 1 and 19, except number 15.
Yeah, if you choose number 15, you know that was a major fail. You're not paying attention.
7.
7. All right. That's a good number. And who knows, Valerie, you might nominate someone next. So let's see what card number 7 has in store.
I worked all night to make sure that we finished this scrum. Oh, that's very interesting.
The sprint.
The sprint, I meant. You're right. Thank you. Thanks for correcting that.
Somebody did not estimate the story points correctly during sprint planning, and now they're paying the price. Or the story was not defined well and was accepted into a sprint.
Did not estimate right. I guess an estimate is just a guesstimate based on what you know.
I mean,
but it just took longer.
There's another meaning to that. I totally get what you said. That could happen, definitely. But this card means something else.
Okay.
It seems to mean that the rest of the team isn't doing some of the tasks. It seems like you have one person doing all the tasks.
Yeah, you're definitely getting that where that is. It's going. It's the people. Sometimes have the rock star developers that always save the day, and they love it. They like saving the day, so they wait till the end and rescue the team, and it's just human nature. It happens a lot, and so that's what this card is touching on.
And those rock star also accept work from product owner during the sprint that was not even planned for sprint. Just
right.
Yeah, because they're talking to product talks to developer directly. So that also happens.
Yes.
Where Scrum Master finds that out, that should be, remediated and stopped, discouraged.
Right. Like, if you take a step back and look at it, if you're always having one person being the star of the team, how does that make the rest of the team feel? And basically, so the whole point is the team should be treated equally. So
yeah, we'll end up with the code that no one knows about, and then that's not a good for code integrity as well. Somebody developed something behind the scenes and put it there, and the rest of the team was not aware of it. So those are the rockstar developers that are causing actually trouble on the team.
but I'm not saying they're bad, because you want those kind of people, believe me, but you want the glory to be equalized across the team, not just one person every time.
So that's why everything that's in sprint backlog, that's what they should be working on, and nothing outside of it. Even though maybe they have free time, they still should not accept anything and work on that. They should redirect the request to Scrum Master.
Right, and Nitin, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think Slava is bringing out a multitude of things.
That's right.
We're talking about having a learning team instead of a specialist. We're talking about making the work visible in the sprint backlog. So that's what the people focus on. And just making sure you've got a predictable workload. I tell people, no matter how many pages you put into a printer, it won't print any faster, right? So there's only so much you can do. And you want to avoid death marches and burnouts. So as a former product owner, I got in one day and the team was very enthusiastic in telling me, we worked over the weekend to, move things along. And they thought I would be impressed, but I was actually horrified. I was like, oh no, what you just did was skewed my metrics, because I'm going to assume you can probably churn out a lot more, but that assumption comes with you're going to be working every weekend, and that's not consistent. So please stop that. I would be very careful over here. And there's some good comments in the chat as well. This could impact quality, team morale, and other things as well. So certainly you don't want to get into these situations.
And like with your example, Nitin, I always pull the Agile principle about working at a sustainable pace indefinitely. And you're violating that when you do that.
Yeah. So who could change this? Or who could influence this?
Anybody want to take a chance?
Scrum Master.
Valerie says everyone in the chat.
Master and team collectively have to, the team collectively decides, because they are the ones who are doing the work. So if one of the team members say, okay, I'm going to work all night, the weekend, and others, so as Bob puts it, that the glory cannot be only to one person. So as a team, they have to decide, okay, each one is given a particular story to work on. So all the 5 days of the week, they work whatever, 9 to 5. And what's not done in that sprint has to be rolled over to the next sprint. So it's the team and the Scrum Master decide, these are the, stories that we would complete in this. At the start of the sprint review, they decide, okay, in this, whether it's 2-week sprint or 4-week sprint, only this many stories we can complete, so there is no need to work on the weekends to, to do any work, So
at the start of the sprint, as in sprint planning. So,
Oh, sorry, sprint planning. Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, and we are saying that these are anti-patterns. That means it is happening over and over and over again. That means the whole team has to sit down together, look at what the issue is, and because one or more of those team members could be part of the problem. For example, the product owner bringing in certain things, piling on somebody who is ready to accept that. So I think it is the whole team, the developers, the team members, Scrum Master, product owner. all of them have to sit down together and look at this recurring problem and then implement the solution, which is.
So if Scrum Master won't interfere, product owner and developer will continue working together, and that will not stop because developer delivers what product owner wants, but developer working weekend trying to please product owner. And Scrum Master has no idea that it's happening. So I think Scrum Master can only stop this by making sure the process is followed.
Yeah, that is true. But again, they all make the rules together and then they decide, they agree to follow those rules. So that's why they all have to come together to look at the problem and then decide collectively how to resolve this issue rather than just Scrum Master taking up that responsibility.
Right, and that's
Scrum
why I
Master
think we ended up it's
together.
between the team and the Scrum Master, I think. Yeah. Okay, is it okay to move on to the next? No, you okay?
So
Oh,
Bob,
I'm
you are
fine.
saying product owner should not be part of that discussion. I strongly believe that most of the time product owner also needs to be brought in there.
I agree with Sunil. I think it's collective. I think the Scrum Master would have the ability to identify a pattern or something that's recurring, and then would work collectively to get into team agreements. And those agreements would come to light with the collective conversations amongst the members of the dev team and the product owner. And then we all the Scrum Master to kind of enforce this or keep a check on this as time goes by. So it can be, ideally in a utopian world, it should be collective. And that's just my perspective, but wherever the cards land, it's just the voice of the forum and let's see what emerges.
Okay.
Is Valerie still about? Valerie, do you have a door number to pick except 7 or 15? Well, not you. Who are you going to nominate to pick? Rather.
I'm going to pick a name from the list.
All right.
Scrolling. Derek Wright.
How about number 10?
Number 10 it is.
Oh,
okay, this is interesting. We had 3 browns. I was wondering if we were going to just follow the brown color, but here, okay, but you broke it. We're now red, so that's
all right.
Ooh,
I thought
all right.
people
Derek's
were
breaking
interested.
patterns.
What do we have?
We have a 15-person team on the small Scrum team. Is that what it says?
There are 15 people on our Scrum team.
It's too many people.
Like 10 product owners and 5 developers.
That's a big Scrum team.
Could you imagine getting through a daily Scrum in 15 minutes with 15 people? So, what is the ideal team size?
So I got a funny story before we get started.
Okay.
I had a real estate agent who said she couldn't really work on Sunday morning because she was part of her church choir. And I jokingly said, oh, maybe you should just start singing faster and quicker. And, then you'll be available to help show us houses. And she laughed her head off. But it's just kind of that, what do you do? Go faster, talk faster when you have 15 people? And Bob, you're right. The question to ask is what's the recommended or ideal size?
I think, sorry, one question for Bob.
No, it's for anybody. Like, what size are your teams?
I think if you have 15 people, like adding more people does not necessarily mean that you're gonna do work much faster. Like if you have one person and you have two, the 2 of them are not gonna make work 50% faster. It's just maybe with that 10 extra %. So there you're getting at some point to certain level where like you get too many people on the team, and now it's kind of hard to manage. So I think 7 people is the ideal. Like if you have a lot of different work streams and different teams, so maybe you will start talking about Scale Agile framework where you have multiple Scrum teams. working in different streams of work, and then they come together at the end of sprint to launch something collectively. So, but yeah, one team with 15 people is not yeah, productive, I should say. It's counterproductive.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe you have sub teams. I mean, I can't remember, some other Scrum Master had a fairly large team, and the way he got through his stand-up meetings is he had people designated as leaders of these little sub teams. So
Okay.
they spoke.
Yeah, so like lead developers and just junior developers who will never speak, kind of thing.
So like, what could you do? Like you mentioned sub teams, like.
So like you would talk to a lead developer, let's say for Java code, you would talk to a lead developer, and then he has maybe he working with two other junior Java developers who just do whatever he says. So they're not play any role. They're just there to implement whatever the lead developer is telling them. But the one who decides about which stories will go into sprint, the story points, and you know, brings up what his kind of micro team did or did not do, and what they're gonna do is just one person. So there's like a 3-person team, but one person will speak for that. So
What would you think about breaking the team in half or maybe even thirds? Because the ideal team size based on research is 4.6 people. And I always round it up to 5. So to me, if you could do it, make 3 teams of 5. Because also you guys are all PMPs or you're all project managers, you know the whole communication channels. I don't have the answer for 15, but I'm assuming it's around 100 channels probably, if you went through that equation. And if you have a team of 5, I believe it's around 20. Again, I'm just, you know, rounding it. So think of the fewer communication channels that teams have to deal with. Like how can that team of 15 get anything done? So it's interesting how our project management skills, you know, fall into play with this kind of stuff. So who could fix something like that? I didn't need to put it on the dev team.
I think dev team and Scrum Master would raise the flag, saying that this is the anti-pattern is happening, because the development manager, engineering manager would not be a red flag, or would not think of that as a negative. But Scrum Master might find it as an anti-pattern and work with the engineering manager to fix that and break it into two teams.
Yeah, but it is agile. These are agile teams. Where does the concept of junior manager come into picture here? All at the same level in the team, isn't it?
There's no titles. Yes.
There are no titles.
Somebody might have as an engineer 1 year of experience out of college, and another one as an engineer will have 15 years of experience. So that's what I mean.
Yeah. Probably.
So they will do different things in terms of coding, and yeah, experience, basically work experience as a programmer.
Yeah, I think Scrum of Scrums or something, scaled agile, something like that has to be implemented here in some way.
Yeah, we have multiple teams. Like one team takes care of growth features, one team takes care of customer assistance features, some team takes care of member experience features. So that's how our work is split up. I'm not sure that's a good thing. So if it has to do with the account section, or it goes to member experience team, or it has to do with the e-commerce checkout funnel, purchasing, it has to go to growth team, so this kind of things. So that is decided by product. So that's how the teams are smaller, because there is not one team, but there are a lot of teams, and they come together at the end of sprint to launch something collectively. So I think it more goes into like scaling Scrum into a bigger, for like a enterprise level.
Yeah, and the other question I would ask is, how would you actually break the teams up? Say you decided to break into 3 teams of 5. Who would make that decision? What would you? Who do you think should make that decision?
Like engineering managers would just say, these guys will work on the growth team. These guys will go and work on member experience team. So that these guys will work on that team. There will be one product owner, one Scrum Master, but engineering managers will assign developers to be on those teams.
What would you think about asking the team? Say, hey, we need 3 teams. What do you guys think? And you guys, because they know each other's skills, they know how they could complement each other. So why not just ask the team?
Yeah, it's Agile, and the team should decide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be ideal. But in corporate world, I think that those functional managers, they need to do something, so they will actually assign that. Yeah.
See, I think, I'm just a little reflective in knowing Slava for less than an hour that he's quite a revolutionary and he can make this happen. I think if he were ever to be put in this situation, he could simply ask team members. Maybe a Scrum Master could facilitate this. And I think we all agree, in essence, smaller teams are better. And maybe the Scrum Master could facilitate saying, hey, folks, we're trying to just break down into something smaller. Maybe in the spirit of self-organizing, how do you want to kind of work together as different teams? Who wants to be in what value stream or channel or product initiative, and just let the teams kind of move about. And I would, because I've already consulted Bob, I know there are no managers on Scrum teams and there's no command and control. So Bob is probably taking the managers out, or those who have those titles, out to lunch, and maybe do a lunch and learn. And then whoever the Scrum Master is, maybe facilitate and ask meaningful questions. Oh, do you have engineering skills on this team that has come together? Oh, do you have such and such ability on this team that's forming? Oh, do we have some people who are offshore who may not necessarily be here, and maybe they're on a video thing, and how is that going together? So that you are having somewhat of an engaged dialogue and reflecting back to the team and making them aware of what's there. And by the time Bob gets people back, all these people with the title who are, again, well-meaning and they just want to help, they come back and go, oh, wow, is this what it's going to look like? And then give them an opportunity to kind of probe or ask questions, or maybe even challenge that composition. But what you've done is you've helped people self-organize and anticipate some of those challenges and see what it looks like for an experiment.
And whenever I work with my teams, I always say, it's an experiment. We can change. If we find it's not working, we can change. It's not like we're going to be stuck with this for a year. We could try it a couple sprints. If it doesn't work, we can change it. And that usually alleviates a lot of the concern when you say, okay, it's not permanent. And if it works, keep it. All right, so I think we have time for one more card. There's not going to be Q&A at the end because I'm really hoping that people are asking their questions and doing that throughout the session. So who would like to pick that last card that we're going to talk about today?
May I?
Yes.
3.
Number 3. Okay. Another
it's a different color.
Yeah, different color.
2 cards.
And Bob and I will stay on informally even after the recording. So between the two of us, we can still facilitate.
I have to drop. I'm sorry to tell you that I have to drop at 7. I have another meeting I gotta jump on. Yeah, this is so good. Hi, that was a perfect card to pick to kind of follow on with this conversation. Our team is never the same. It changes depending on what needs to be done during a sprint.
This seems to be very nimble and very agile.
Wow, that is crazy.
Puns intended.
How do Agile if the team change?
So there's more into this. As Nitin and I, we've been doing these sessions, that and Michael James brought it up, that the difference between component team and feature teams. And the whole idea to have a high-performing team is you want a feature team. And that means everybody has different skills so they can complete everything without going outside the team. Because the minute you go outside your team, things slow down because you control what goes on with your team during your daily scrum. It's so much easier. So if you have a real feature team, you won't have this problem because you'll have the skills you need to basically work on anything. If you have a special skill that's needed, you bring a guest in. You see, okay, there might be some technology that nobody's aware of. So you bring some, let somebody else join the team and help that team with that new technology, do pair programming, things like that. So that's pretty much what this card is leaning towards. So Nitin, did you have anything you want to add?
I always have something to add, but I want to leave it open to others.
I agree with Bob, so nothing to add.
So who would be able to fix this or help resolve this?
Scrum Master, with the help of the team, of course, with the developers.
You know, Scrum Master, I think, is definitely the one who's watching that mission process is followed. But you know, engineering manager might say, "Oh, I need this guy because I need him to work on CMS this sprint." So okay, you lost somebody. You know, and then
Hey, Slava, assume for a moment that your engineering manager got fired. How would you work with the scenario?
I would be very happy about it because
we're being recorded.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Okay. I mean, except all these problems, like you don't get any help from engineering manager. So only if the team is self-sustained with the product owner, scrum master, and development team, you know. So that is functional role that's not really needed for the team, but for other bureaucratic tasks and you know, activities in the corporate environment, hiring maybe like make sure, you know, the skill set matches kind of that human resources, resource management maybe, but as part of the team, unless that person is actually coding or doing architecture or something, really can get by without that person.
I think that it is pointing to a bigger problem. Probably the organization does not understand Agile well enough. Their team is not formed properly. And if the team is changing because the engineering manager is pulling people out, that means the engineering manager doesn't understand Agile at all. So there is a need for a coach here. I doubt that Scrum Master alone or the team alone can fix that issue. But probably it is the Scrum Master who should be escalating it. He is the person who is taking care of all the impediments, and it should be a big impediment that every time you're doing something new, you have to once again bring the team together, come up with the rules. That's not the way the Agile works.
Yeah, so I would actually engage the product owner, and again, we like to end on time, so we only have a minute. So do you guys want to continue this discussion at a future Agile discussion group? Because I could just leave the board the way it is. You know,
Yes.
Okay.
It's
all right. And this is our contact information, and it's Nitin and Bob, and it's you're eligible for 1 PDU. John will be sending a survey, and you'll be able to you know, get that PDU. It doesn't automatically get registered, but you'll get that number that you can use to easily claim it. And so with that, I would like to conclude this session, and I'll turn off the recording so you can have a more open conversation.